What'd you say?
I said I do.
I do. Ooh, 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 ooh. Wait a minute. That is so that was so me,
Me,
me, me,
me.
me, 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 me. Man,
Get
that
it
was bad.
together. Get it together. Gather yourself.
Here we go. Let's do it. All right. Impactful Conversations, Coach Mike, Coach Ish, October 13th, 2022. And take. Here we go. And three, two, one. What's up, beautiful people, and welcome back to the channel. I said welcome back, and if you are here again and you haven't subscribed yet, shame on you. Shame on you. So we're gonna stop. We're gonna pause to give you a chance to hit the subscribe button, right? Tell somebody about it. Comment. Let me know where you're watching from if you haven't already. But welcome back to the channel. You know the brand PNZ Life Coaching. You know the man, Coach Mike James, and I'm back again with another impactful conversation. And just in case you ain't figured it out yet, we got a repeat in this thing. It's going down. Always excited when I get a chance to share this space with dope, amazing, beautiful people. And this, I'm not even going to say guess because you're at home at this point. So, this amazing soul is just always exciting when we can get together, chop it up, collaborate. Um, so, right then, I just went straight to stop, collaborate, and listen.
I was with you, but I was gonna let it go.
So, welcome, y'all. Impactful Conversations. I'm excited. Look, if y'all don't know already, and for those of you who've never met this beautiful person or have seen her on whether it was Black Business Boom and Impactful Conversations Part 1, we back again in this thing. So nice. We had to do it twice. Or is this three? I don't know.
This is
Man,
tres.
this is
Tres. This is tres.
so we own it. So I'm going to pause for a moment. Let all the beautiful people out there just know who you are. Just share with the people who you are. Just give us a little background about who you are. And we're going to dive in.
Well, first and foremost, it is dope to be back. This one has been a long awaited return, but I am grateful to be back on Impactful Conversations. This was one of my favorite platforms to interview on. And I'm excited to get to know your audience even more. So my name is Aisha, Coach Bellamy, but they call me Ish, and that's just simply who I am. I'm a disabled veteran. I am a mother. I am a wife. I am an entrepreneur. I am the plug. I am some people's sage. I am that person that no matter which way we do business, it is always safe business and it is always safe space with me. So I'm learning how to acknowledge myself as an experience. You know what I mean? They say that life is an experience. Well, being in my presence is an experience. So it's hard to classify just one thing of who I am when I'm a whole bunch of things. So I'm excited to share this portion of myself and my experiences in the gems that I can offer with the audience for this episode. Because the last two was dope. You know what I mean? We had the first solo one, me and you. Then I believe Crazy is my trigger word. Shout out to it. With my
Yeah.
partner we were on, and now we're back with another impactful conversation. So I'm excited.
Oh, man. That's so dope. And like, it's always a treat. And I love the way you explain that. And for the people that's watching, know who you are. Know who you are. I love when you explain that I'm experienced. So just to narrow it down to one, two, three things, that's tough. Because, in the 90s, we would say, you're all that in a bag of chips. Not only that, you're also brilliant, outstanding, skillful, and successful boss. Shout out to Brown Boss,
Shout out to Brown Boss one
AKA.
time for the one time.
Shout out to Brown Boss. Who's been on as well, fam out there, just doing some amazing things. So with that and how you explain it and how you went right into it again, once we dive really into the topic, it's going to be, I think, what I'm here for, impactful. It's going to be impactful for a lot of people who don't get a chance to hear real topics that weigh on them, right? Um, and so your approach to everything, I love it as well, because as you said, it's always that safe space. And being a coach, everything is about creating and maintaining that safe space as well. So before we get into it, for those who may have forgot who you are, just give a little bit of background on kind of your life and what's brought you to this point. You mentioned some things in there, but give a little background on, you know, your upbringing and what's got you to the point where you sit in this space so powerful today.
So I remember when I was asked that, and if people go back, so like make sure you go check out all the other episodes, not just my two, but all the rest of them.
We gonna pin it.
You know what I'm saying? But when I was asked that question before, the answer was still very generic, right? And then last year I lost my brother due to murder. He was murdered on one of the deadliest days of 2021, December 30th. And you know, the question of what is the impactful moment in my life that made me want to do it. And my truth is, I come from a history of very traumatic, impactful moments. And all of the layers of these traumatic, impactful moments that I had in my life, I've had to learn how to navigate every day after that. Right. So, what happened after my brother was I realized I had figured it out. I had figured out how to navigate my grief. I had figured out how to navigate my suffering. I had figured out how to navigate my emotional pain, my emotional mindset, and my state of mind, all while still living every day, conducting business, staying on track and staying on course, giving myself space in the moments that I needed. So when you ask like how did I get here? Yes, I'm a disabled veteran. I went to Afghanistan. I have been in very emotionally abusive relationships. I come from a home of trauma. I literally was the project kid where my mother's home was the crack house, right? All of that is what got me to that point. Because if I had not experienced all of those hells, even my cousin dying in front of me, which most of my family are still not aware of, that's what happened because I was so obedient in that moment, like really in spirit on how I had to move so that what we needed as a family, we could one day get to the point of telling the story. There's so many things that I had already endured before losing my brother. In that moment, I understood what impact really was, right? I had felt it. I had done those things, but I had never given myself a moment to say, you know what, that hit was the impact.
Yeah.
That tragedy was the impact for me to say, am I really done with holding myself back from being great? And I found poise in it. You know, everybody talk about humility and all of that. That's great too. I actually found a little bit opposite of humility. I allowed myself to be rageful. I allowed myself to be angry. I explored emotions and emotional states that I normally don't operate in because I was too afraid of them. And what I found in allowing myself to no longer and operate in the fear, not that I don't acknowledge my fear, I comfort my fear, I nurture my fear, right? I found poise. I found the ability to have people, business partners, other people who are in business finding themselves this year in the same situation where they're losing literally a brother and being able to offer words of not just encouragement and guidance, but relatability and words from an empathetic ear, right? A place of empathy, because I don't just understand, I overstand your pain right now. So all of my moments of trauma that were impactful led up to being to the one where he was my brother, but he was my son. And I felt a double whammy with him. And what I said in that moment was legacy. and I meant it. And that moment was the most impactful because I knew that I wasn't going to fall apart because he was no longer here, that I wasn't even allowed to, only meant to honor. Um, so there's so many things that I've experienced that are impactful, but that one was the one for me last year.
Yeah, wow. That, and to be on the side of when that was happening and to see, it's amazing what you said that you gain, right? And that poise, right? Because operating in it, everything you just explained, you can see it. Because some
Mhm.
people can say something and you're like,
Mhm.
that's not really what I'm observing. It's only
Mhm.
perspective, right?
Mhm.
But for the way you explained that, that was it. You were so vulnerable and realistic with yourself.
Mhm.
And when you needed space, you say, "Hey y'all, I need space. Hey y'all, I'm here today. I'm showing up, but I'm just here, y'all, because I need this space." But and for people to have that level of self-awareness is
Mhm.
such that alone is so impactful because that's one of the most important things you can do. I always say one of the most important journeys you can go on is that journey of self-discovery.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful, powerful place to be in. So when you think about that and all the things that were impactful and the things that led you to this point as an adult today, what is your idea? And kind of reiterating again, because it's been over a year now
Yes.
since
Yeah.
our last. So we change. That's a beautiful thing. We're like a ever blossoming plant or flower. So just checking back in with that thought, what's your idea of impact as an adult today?
Not muting myself.
Mm,
What I realized was I no longer desire to have trauma be what impacts me and what makes me move. Um, and I've been allowing myself to listen to other people when they give me flowers instead of denying the flower. Because if I'm denying the flower, then I'm denying a person an opportunity to give to me.
mm,
And that give and receive. It's a two-way street. And I was so used to being the giver, I did not know how to receive. And what I learned how to do in this time and in this space of receiving was find like my voice, just like everyone else. We say you all have a story, everyone has a story, everyone has been through something, and we know that. But what happens is we compare our stories, whether out aloud or internally, and so it mutes us from sharing our story because we feel like maybe there's someone over here who does a better job at telling their story. And
mm-hmm,
it's like, listen, it doesn't, if you're not articulate, that's great, go write. If you're not a writer, awesome, talk it. Either way, share, right? That to me is what in adulthood, what it means to be impactful. It means how can I, they say trigger people, and I do trigger the world, but I'm learning that I don't have to trigger everyone in a negative way.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right, right.
And so that's the impact. Like, that's what impact is for me as an adult, learning how to not project my things at people, my hurt, my pains, my judgments, my self-doubts, my limitations and limiting beliefs at you, and muting myself to not share something that I feel like, oh, well, he has the credentials. He doesn't need,
Mm-hmm,
I think about it, you're a coach, and from coach to coach, we often can feel like, well, hey, this person is further along in their coaching career. So there's nothing that I could give them or offer them, or there's no words that I could say that would make them feel encouraged and inspired the way that I feel inspired by them. However, it's always that moment where when you're vulnerable as a coach and you see a coach that you are inspired by leaves a comment under your thing and say, hey, great job, and it's like, wow, I had an impact on them. Or having a conversation with
mm-hmm,
someone you
mm-hmm.
admire and look up to in the same lane, and they say, wow, you left an impression. That's impact to me. That's
Yeah.
why, like, not muting ourselves, not not hiding from the things that make you you and allow you to live in your purpose. That to me is the impact that adults are supposed to be leaving.
Mm. Oh, look, I'm just letting that. I'm just letting that marinate right here on the heart. That's it.
I
That's
hope
the
that wasn't
post.
too all over the place for
No,
you.
no, that was beautiful. Don't mute yourself.
Yeah,
Like let me be 100% Coach Mike for a moment,
I
because
should.
I'm a fool. I'm
I
a
know.
fool. Right as I asked you that question and I was listening to what you said, right, I had to clear my throat. And so when you said I'm learning not to mute myself, my mouse was hovering over mute. And when you said that, it resonated with me, not just the fact that I was about to mute to clear my throat, right? But when you said that, it caught my attention and I even forgot that I was about to mute. So I'm like, whoa. And then I was like, I can't mute now. And so when you got into it, I muted for a second to clear my throat. But that's it. People say that's it. That's the post. Don't mute yourself. That that's huge. I think a lot of what happens today, I don't know how people feel about this, but I think a lot of what happens today, there's so many voices out there. There's so many opinions. It's so much out there in these social media spaces, as especially, and it's so easy for us to mute ourselves,
Mhm.
right? Because as you were sharing, they're farther along. Oh, they have millions of subscribers, followers, whatever. Well, my opinion, my thought is not important.
Mhm.
Yes, it is,
Mhm.
because it's yours and it adds that little bit of flavor, your spice, your essence to the
Mhm.
larger conversation. And when you are able to look at life the way you approach it, and as you're sharing this, as we're having this conversation, it's so important to not mute yourself. So that's why I was like, wait a minute, let me just let that. I hope somebody caught that, because
Listen.
there's somebody out there right now that's dealing with it. They're muting themselves on a daily basis. And a lot of people, they have this thing where they say, I don't know what my voice is. I don't know my
Mhm.
voice. I don't know my voice, because you're not exercising it. You're muting yourself. Man,
Mhm.
whew, that's a series right there, sis.
Listen, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to be back on, right? Because this has been the year of unmuting me. I spent the time to acknowledge myself, be accountable. I've done those in the previous year. This year was the year of unmuting myself to myself first, to then unmute myself to the world. Um, so that's why I hit you and was like, "Hey, I got a topic I really want to discuss," and I just, because to me it's important and I have the privilege to discuss it,
Yeah, yeah,
you know?
yeah. I get to. I don't have to. I get to.
That
I have the
part.
privilege.
That part.
Oh, so speaking of that, when you reached out to me, I was like, so me, okay, well, tell me more. That powerful coaching question. Tell me more. I'm all ears. Let me hear. For you watching, don't do it. When I said I'm all ears, somebody's like, yeah, you are, coach. You got some ears on you. Listen, so sis, tell tell everyone, tell me about when you reached out to me. Tell me about where we're about to go in this conversation. What's that topic that you said you wanted to talk about? And I want you to just take a moment to just unravel it, present it how you want the topic, and kind of what that means for someone who's never heard it. And
Mhm.
and let's dive in.
Yeah, so there's some people who may have heard it a little bit, because I have been using it in the ways, and what I find is that it really has been triggering people. And however, what I am also finding is that once we have the conversation of where I'm coming from and why
Mm-hmm.
that is the term that I'm using and who I'm actually talking to, everything shifts in how people have been able to handle the conversation, and it takes them to their own places, whether they're a man or a woman. Um, However, this conversation for me came about during Deepak Chakra's 21-day abundance challenge. And during this challenge, he asks you on particular days to really spend time with the maternal. and spend time on your maternal side, from your mother to your grandmother, and looking at them as humans and not as your mother, but just as a person, right? And for some people, what I found in the first time I did this exercise and I was a part of the challenge, which was literally right before the world shut down. Shout out to Sundial Creatives, Kimberly. She had invited me in and we stopped that challenge. I believe the same week the world shut down. We were at the end of it. So I'm so grateful for it because I know that that kept me grounded mentally. And it's a part of the story. Um, so for everybody else in the group, or not for everybody else, but what it felt like to me in the moment, what I told myself was that for everyone else, talking to the maternal, dealing with the maternal was simple, and for me it was a time. It forced me to look at my mother in a way that was very healing for me, because I didn't grow up viewing my mother as a monster by no means. Truths get unveiled over the years, and when it comes up over time, you have to deal with what you have to deal with. You have to accept what things really look like for you. But what that challenge taught me was not to villainize my mother, even if she should have been, if that makes sense. And um, that was 2 years ago, right? So the beginning of the pandemic. And since then, I facilitated some other support groups and groups of people and supported them through this challenge. And I was privileged in this year to have groups of the fam go through the challenge with me. And one person in particular, I'm very, very, very familiar with their personal story with their mother. And they were able to do things that was like, wow, this is phenomenal. And so I heard the term maternal madness, and I started going into this theory of what is that and how do we create it and what does it mean? And for me, maternal madness in my theory is that if you have a woman who is mentally healthy, not that days aren't hard, not that times aren't hard, not that she does not get overwhelmed, not that she does not break down, not that she is not human, but she acknowledges her traumas. She acknowledges the hurts of her past. She gives space for the fact that she is human. She does not try to bear more on her shoulders than what she can. She breaks down when she needs to. She does the things that are healthy for her mind so that she can grow. Women who give space to grow, their families grow, even if there is an absence of the father. And I literally grew up in a household that can show and prove this statistic. But when you have a woman who does not allow for the traumas of her past to no longer hurt her, what happens is an automatic response to project those traumas. And so I'd much rather trigger people by using the term maternal madness. That's maternal madness. That's a result of maternal madness. Because what it does is it brings them to me so that we can have the conversation of how we no longer need to be mad and how we can overcome it. Because it is a thing, right? And it starts with giving yourself space, sis, in real life. Allowing yourself to no longer let the hurts and the traumas of your past lead you, being accountable if you've hurt your children, being accountable if you were not a great partner, being accountable if there are things that you've done that put other people in a trajectory, in a path that wasn't necessarily the path for them. And it's never too late to actually be accountable for those things, right? But to also offer for the flip for the people who have experienced maternal madness. And this is where I'm not just talking to women, but I'm talking to men and women. Give yourself space, king, queen. Go do the work, king or queen. It's still the same. It's still the same. And it goes back into, are you doing the internal work? Are you granting yourself real space in the times that you need it? Are you in therapy? Do you have a life coach? Do you have a counselor? And I'm not talking about your friends. They are great to go kiki and kaka with. But if your friends are in the same situations you're in, then they cannot be your therapist. And I'm talking about talking to people who are safe. Have you analyzed yourself and looked at where do you really want to go? Like there's this to me is a topic that really could have the potential to be spread like across the masses in the ways that would be really great, right? However, what I'm finding is that what people get stuck on is the maternal madness. And people think that I'm coming at or downgrading or degrading women, and this isn't that. I just want to use that term so that we can have impactful conversations. It's literally no different than the mission that you have here. And I want to offer like guidance, like, there is processes on how to acknowledge your hurts and your pains. That's why it's really important to have a life coach. That's why it's important to have a counselor or a therapist, even if you see them monthly, right? Like I am an advocate of, if you can take a Tylenol, you can see a therapist, right? Because your therapist is your first medication, and you might not need a dosage of seeing them every week or even twice a week. You might not need to see your therapist bi-weekly. You may only need to see your therapist monthly, but you need, quarter, annual, but not at all, because it means there's no one there to help you navigate through this experience of life, these moments when you're getting hit and it feels so devastating. And for women that suffer from the maternal madness, when devastating moments hit them, they go back and retreat to the moment of the trauma that was created, the moment the trauma was created, right? So even bringing awareness to the people who have experienced the maternal madness, please be kind. Offer kindness. View your maternal as a human, and if you can be nice to a bum on the street, you really can offer kindness, not calls, not closeness, not fakeness, but kindness to that maternal, so that you don't inadvertently project it to your next generation. I had the privilege of watching and being a part of my granddaughter's birthing process. And this was my first grandchild. And I am more than aware that all the work that I did prior to that moment had to be done so that this child literally could be the child born after the generational curses were broken. So what I have been saying is she is our first spiritually free baby, where her mother and her mother's connection is genuine and it's real. It's not fake. It's not forged. It's built upon trust. So all this child will know is love and trust between mother and daughter. Not jealousy, not envy, not I have to one up you, not trauma being projected, healthy boundaries, healthy connections, healthy relationships. That to me is what we all desire. But you have to have the uncomfortable conversations.
So I want everybody to mark where you are right now in the interview. I want you to go back to the beginning of that question and then come back. Just so you cycle back through that again, because the breakdown of how you explain that, right? Maternal madness and that process is so important. So when you were saying that, I was just thinking, it really I just dive headfirst into coaching mode. And that the question that came up for me as someone who's went through a journey of tapping into, shining the light on some uncomfortable conversations for a family that was raised as my family was. This conversation around religion, spirituality, a lot of different things and that's why I say that journey of self-awareness is so important, that I had to have those uncomfortable conversations, moments, and that work. People ask me about the journey sometimes, and I say, listen, I don't advise anyone to do it as I did, because the way I did it it was probably more difficult but I was prepared for it. And so what happens now when those blocks come up, when it's anything that's unfamiliar. So now I hear you, Coach Bellamy, but now you're telling me I got to deal with that, right? This uncomfortable, these truths that
Yeah.
exist, right, in our
Yeah.
lives, those dark places we don't want to tap into. So it's there. So here's the question I was thinking about as you were explaining that. What do you say to that person that says, okay, I'm hearing you. Some of the stuff you said resonated with me, and I know
Uh-huh.
it's there,
Uh-huh.
but nah. I ain't ready, or I don't want to look into that space because
Uh-huh.
I think that's one of the biggest things. Even when I explain any journey or any transition where, and that's why I chose transformation coaching, because I want to help people in those transitional spaces where it's like, okay, I don't know if it's left, right, up, down, back, forward, but I just
Mhm.
know I'm stuck. And
Mhm. Mhm.
I feel that I'm at this change in trajectory or that fork in the road, right?
Mhm.
But I'm just not sure how to navigate that. So for people who will hear you say that and say, okay, I'm picking up what she's putting down, but I'm not quite ready. I love where you said, give yourself that space. So talk for a moment about how it looks to even start that journey.
And giving yourself space.
Mm-hmm.
And
And giving yourself that space to deal with the uncomfortable.
so what that part, right? So the thing I would say to that person that's like, I hear you and I get you and I'm feeling you and I'm with you, but right, because
Mm-hmm.
that's really what they're saying to me. What I say to them is, you hear me, you feel me, and I hear, I feel you. Put and in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were hurt and you are healing. We think that but or are our only options. We forget and is always an option. Two things can exist simultaneously. Two of the things can be true at the same time. Yes, you have layers of trauma that feel very difficult to deal with, right? And you are healing from the layers of trauma that feel very difficult to deal with. First off, acknowledging that for me has been the thing that allows people to calm down, because most people feel unseen. When they say this hurts, what have most, unfortunately, most of us come from parents that say, when we say that hurts, they say, suck it up, right? I'm a firm believer of, if you say that hurts, I'm going to first acknowledge the fact that you told me that hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So to the person that says to me, well, listen, that hurt too bad. You know what? You're right. They did hurt you so bad then. They did feel so horrible then. That was so, in that moment, you felt the physical pain. It was ugly. Oh man. And look at how you made it out of that. Right? Because what it's doing is reminding them that your trauma, that thing that happened, that experience, that moment isn't this moment. And a lot of times when we're healing through the process and we're saying, how do we begin? And we start to feel the emotions, we allow
Mm-hmm.
the emotional state of the past to take over for us in the present. And that's not what we need to do. That's when, breathe in through your nose, deep, close the mouth in through your nose, get that belly filled with air, hold, and then exhale out the mouth as deep as possible, emptying the belly out, all the air out, 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 hold. And again, and repeating that 3 times just so that you can level yourself out. And what happens is clarity, clear mind after that. It could be emotions. I remember I had a psychology class I was in, and our presentation to end the semester was to do some type of thing. And me being me, I wanted to do a breathing exercise, and I wanted everyone to sit and just be still for a dang on moment, please. Thank you. And there was a gentleman who was in the back of the room, and and I'm breathing in. And this was my vulnerable moment, because I had never done this with a group of people. This was what I was learning in therapy and using for
Mm-hmm.
myself, and was being challenged because of a class to
Right.
teach others, right? So he raised his hand. He's like, excuse me, Miss Bellamy. I'm like, yes. He's like, I don't know what I'm feeling. I feel like I'm crying. I'm like, it's okay. You might feel emotional. Okay. So we do the exercise, gets up. He bolts out the class and I'm behind him, like, what? Oh my goodness, feeling bad and everything. And I get to him and all I could feel was the mama bear in me say hug. And so I hugged him and this tall man wept in my arms like a baby and he needed that moment. That came from breath.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Stopping for just a moment to breathe properly. Most people breathe so shallow. We have
Mm-hmm.
anxiety. This is where we store all of the pain. So when we're saying, how do you start it, right? Stop, take a breath, let the lid off the pot because it's boiling over. Lift the garage. It doesn't matter what analogy. Lift the garage door so everything can fall out. Whatever analogy sits well with you, do that. That's the start. Because from there, you get clarity. From there, even in the explosion, what happens? The dust settles. After the
Yeah.
explosion, dust always settles. So you have to give space for the dust to settle. And what happens most of the time, what happens for people in their mind, and I'm going to speak it from experience for myself, what would happen for me in the past was the explosion, even though it was an explosion from the past, felt like it was happening all of the time. I never was allowing the dust to settle, and I never saw that the dust had been settled.
Yeah. That is such a powerful thing that I think people, I guess, downplay or it's so underrated. Breathing. Breath is literally life.
Literally.
And I love that first step is the breath. Before anything else, notice when you said before anything else, breathe. Stop
You
to
even
breathe.
sat up with me. I watched you when I said in through your nose.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Correctly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times, and this is from my years in personal training and just learning how to tell people, you tell people take a deep breath and they go, like, those are not your breathing muscles. Stop. Let's relax, shake it out for a second. Now, just totally relax. No, totally relax. Okay. Okay. Now just bring your head from the tip of your head, like maybe you were an ornament.
Mm-hmm.
You see him get tall. Okay. Now just put your hands on your belly for a minute. I want you to
Mm-hmm.
breathe and feel your hand. So a true breath, and like you said with that example that you gave, so beautiful. Like that emotion can come from that. I did a breath work. I think the first one I did was a couple years ago with a real person who specializes in it. And sis, let me tell you, I was like, oh man, I did yoga and all this stuff and diaphragmatic breathing and the blowing up
Mm-hmm.
the balloon, all these kind of things that we've done in the training world. But when I did a breath work whole session, I was like, man,
Mm-hmm.
so that. And then I think from there, and you can let me know if you agree with this, is acknowledgement of what comes up when
And that's
you're
what happens in the
right.
clarity. You have no, so that right when the dust settles, I'm gonna go to something that I know will trigger every viewer. After the dust settled in 9/11, no one could deny the towers were gone. No one could deny every person that was at the bottom, right? Clarity is gained, acknowledgement happens. You just have to look and open your eyes. The dust has settled. For the traumas
Mm,
of our past, the dust settled after it happened. The explosion is the moment. Then the dust settles. But what we did was we stood there with our eyes closed and we've maintained. I can see, we do everything. Eyes wide shut. Oh, I see. Yes, every way. I'm at work. I'm great. Oh, how are you? I'm amazing. Eyes wide shut. Shut because they refuse to open their eyes to acknowledge what's there after the dust has settled. What do you see? What's in front of you? And most of the times, what I've found, especially since my eyes were closed for so dang on long, there was nothing there. It was greenery. New grass had grown. It had been
mm,
so long. Pastures. It had been so long. You know, it's like I Am Legend. How the world looked after the fact because it had been so long. 40 years I walked around with my eyes.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what happens. And then once we acknowledge, the next step after that is literally a step.
Mm. Right.
It's literally a step, one step in the right direction. That comes from creating healthy habits every day. That comes from not BSing when people say, are you in the mirror? Do you affirm to yourself? And I'm not just talking about the, because my favorite affirmation, I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am strong. Everything I touch turns to mother gold. I live an abundantly radiant, beautiful, opulent, rich, wealthy, financially successful life, right? That's great. But the reality is that most mornings when I'm in my mirror, I am talking to myself to remind myself, honey, you are amazing. This
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
okay. You been had this. Cry if you need to. That's still affirming. I acknowledge myself visually every day, creating healthy habits that aren't just what you talk and what sounds good, because you either have the credentials to know what sounds good or what you know that you have the career path, but actually doing it. Not giving all of your friends and family the advice of a lifetime that changes them and is impactful for them, but
Mm-hmm.
actually doing those things with you and starting with you, securing the bottom to your cup so that what's for you does not miss your cup and that people around you and under you only receive from your overflow. And then people say, well, what's next after that? You will figure it out. That's where I like to go.
Mm.
Because if I give you all of the answers, guess what I am doing? Feeding you. And I feed no one, but I will teach you how to freaking hunt.
Ooh, come on now. When the student is ready, the teacher shall appear.
That's right.
This is like, first of all, when you reach out, that's why it's never hesitation. It's just a matter of when we get together,
Mhm,
because it's always going to be good.
mhm.
Um, the conversation and doing that. And I love you. It's amazing. You went right where I was going to say, where I was going to go next is okay, when that person, they take that breath and they make the acknowledgement, right? That brings that clarity. What's next? And I love that. That's what's next. You will know once you keep, if you feel lost after you say what's next, go back to the first step. Take
Yeah.
that breath, tap back into the source, to that energy, to see what you're hearing, what you're feeling, what's coming up for you. I love that idea. And one thing you mentioned already, you mentioned a therapist, a coach, whatever that is, just to encourage everyone watching to not be afraid to get the help, to get the help. Because as you said, friends and family, that's one thing. Your circle, your web, as I call it, that's one thing. But to get the help of a trained professional,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
Not someone just let me, but a trained professional. Seek the help if you need it. And remember this, give yourself that space, extend yourself that grace while you're doing it, and know
Mhm.
that you are okay. There's nothing abnormal about tapping into that journey and getting the help you need where you
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
There's
And
nothing
I'm a fan.
abnormal about that.
I'm my bad. I'm a fan of looking for the trained and the experienced, right? So what I've found
Mm-hmm.
is there are sometimes people who they have had, and I'm speaking to your audience that their experience with the trained did not leave a good taste in their mouth, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's a real thing. Just like when people talk about the church and the bad experiences that they have in the church, and recently the church acknowledging that that was a real thing. Our field has to do the same, right? We have to acknowledge that it's a real thing of people who will not see a psychologist, they will not see a therapist, they will not see a counselor, and they may not ever see a life coach, right? However, what I will say is if you can't get with the person who has the professional certificates and all of those things, find the right person who their walk shows that they have the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because if nothing else, an experienced person is going to send you to the professional when it is out of their realm. Do you see how that works? So, like,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
parts where people like myself, working alongside people like yourself, we help one another because I'm able to soften up the people who have had negative experiences and get them prepared to find and vet the person that won't give them that negative experience. Sometimes we're so fearful of speaking up in therapy. I don't know how often I've heard people Even myself say, I'm in this therapy thing, and they use therapy as if it's a death sentence or a jail sentence in that moment. And so they're not open, they don't understand me. And instead of making the therapist, the life coach, the whomever work, right? They don't speak up for themselves. And what I've learned how to do is be able to help them learn how to advocate. How did I do that? Because I had to learn how to advocate for myself. I've been advocating for myself for the last 12 years since I've come home from Afghanistan, and dealing with my own disabilities. For me, they are superpowers and abilities, but I recognize that they are disabilities. You see how I check myself?
There you go.
And
There you
they
go.
are
Yep.
disabilities. So I'm coming from that place of experience, and sometimes, we need that, right? Like, we need to find the people who have the professional and the experienced, and see how we can merge them, because that way we're able to make sure everyone receives what they need.
Yeah, I love that. Listen, basically, what she said was y'all need to be tapping in and reaching out. Now, of course, I'm going to drop your information, your links, and everything in the description. But just take a moment to let people know how to tap in with you, and kind of what's going on for you right now, and how can people tap into the essence of, because let me say this, let me speak to the audience real quick. To hear an amazing or dope conversation with Coach and myself is one thing, but to really tap in with you and to just be kind of in your presence or in that web, as I call it, right, is a whole nother story. So give people an opportunity to find out, tell people how they can tap in with you and connect with you and what you have going on.
Yeah, so the fun part about and the exciting part is that right now, um, I have a multitude of things going on, but I am excited to not be able to share them all, right? Like, that to me is super exciting, because I am building some things where people can tap in with myself, but not just me, other people like me, other people who have the experience and the professional who want to tap in those safe spaces and working those out.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the main ones that, at the end of the day, you can go follow me on Instagram at Mrs. Bellamy. You can either find me on any of the social media platforms with Mrs. Bellamy, MRS, Bellamy, Bellamy, or Coach Bellamy. But I am excited to be launching my republication of my book, and phase one complete, and it is actually complete, and pushing that out. So right now we have the waiting list for that. That's the first of many. So what people can do, there's the link in the bios. We can book a consultation and do the things. But what people can do is go and follow, because I give enough free gems for days, and be ready for when it's time to make the investment to come work with me.
Yeah, love
Yeah.
that. I love that.
Mhm.
I I'm excited. Like it's something about genuinely celebrating your people. Like, I feel sometimes that, and especially, I just thought of a whole nother conversation, but especially sometimes in our past that brought us to this point.
Mhm.
I'm talking about even the ancestors to this point, right?
Mhm.
We can get to this competitive state, right? Where it's like, I can't big up someone too much. Like, I don't care what level you're on,
That's right.
whether it's starting out or at the top, I'm still cheering you,
That's right.
because guess what? You said something just a few minutes ago. Out of that overflow, man, as I cheer you on and send you that good energy, good vibrations, guess what? I'm like, you know what? I'm right here. I'm
Yeah.
getting some of that essence that's coming off of you,
Yeah.
because I want to see it's enough out here for us all to win. And I think
Mhm.
when you genuinely not only believe that, but you act on that and live that way,
Yeah.
you'll stay blessed. You'll stay in a space where you'll stay in a position in a space where you can always cheer on someone, and it's never this feeling of, oh well, what about me? No, guess what? I'm cheering them on. I'm going places too.
Yeah.
So I love that. So any last words for the people? Any last words for the
I
people?
actually do. I was getting ready to say, can I have one last word? Because there's an analogy that came
Always.
up recently that I have been excited to get on a platform and it be able to be circulated around forever, right? It is the crabs in the barrel mentality. And I'm going to
That's
go
what I was
somewhere
thinking about.
that I haven't had a lot of people talk about. You ready for this? Have you ever actually seen crabs come out of the barrel? Have you ever watched what crabs do to get out of the barrel? We hear the terms. It's one of the things where I'm a visual learner. And I'm a visual learner because you can tell me something, but how you say it, the tone in which you say it, then
Mm-hmm.
translate and creates the meaning. So all my life I heard, yeah, crabs in a barrel mentality, crabs in a barrel mentality. And I'm like, dang, I don't ever want to be a crab in a barrel, but I'm a Cancer. Right. So you see how for me, just astrology, if you're into that, it's like, dang, am I a crab in a barrel? Oh my goodness, what's wrong? And then, I remembered I had a moment, I was talking to my children, and I remember like telling them about, oh, I remember this moment we were at the Crab Shack in Philly back in the day. Anybody from Philly, you know what I'm talking about, North Philly. And they were getting the blue crabs out, and these crabs were stuck together, and they was trying to climb out the barrel, and the crabs was climbing together. The one crab got out, and they was like lowering the crab, and it hit me. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. And I started looking. What does it look like when crabs are in one space trying to get out? They literally latch on to one another. One person comes out, and there's a chain reaction. They're not just climbing over top of each other the way that we think. It is because of how their shells have been designed. It looks that way. But if you pay attention to the crabs, they lock hands and they pull each other out. So when we're saying certain things, we have to make sure we're giving visuals to it. The crabs are no different than the ants. Ants climb on each other's back, but they will climb on each other's back to forge a bridge that will connect them from one place to another that shouldn't even be able to be, but because they know how to work together and stack. So I wanted to say in closing, start shifting your perspective of how you say things and what you mean when you're saying things. Start practicing finding the and in everything that you hear. Start shifting how you hear it and question if it's something that you're saying in a negative way. And if it is, how can I flip these words into a positive? Why? Because if you can do that with the words that you say, you could do that with your life.
Come on now. I was looking for a microphone, but I'll just use this pen. That was I changed my mind. I said that the whole post was don't mute yourself. I changed my mind. It's the crabs in the barrel. Be the crabs in the damn barrel.
Be the crabs in the barrel.
Latch on together and pull each other up. As you go higher, I go higher.
Yep.
I always talk about perspective, right? And shifting your perspective, because how you look at something, you make it that reality, right? And changing your language and being careful how you. So that right there was more impactful than everything else that we talked about, because I've never even thought about that. It's
Because
like,
think
what's
about
the
it, crabs in a
end?
barrel have to be caught. They're caught to begin with. The crabs is naturally in a barrel. So even the fact that we transfer that into this way of putting each other down, we're not hearing what we're saying to one another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Look, I'm circling back around the block, but I'm gonna ask you again, any other last words? Because if your last word is gonna be like that, we'll be here next week. I'll be
You
like,
know what? I
and
was
what
getting
else,
ready to say
sis?
my last word is we gonna figure out when we gonna do this again, because I feel like this is one of the things too, right? Because you said something earlier and we were talking about the gifts and sharing and talking about social media and these platform and podcasts, right? And how many that are out there. This is where I put the in. There are so many platforms out there for those of us that don't have one to go and share our voice on them. So I'm here to come back and share my voice, not just here, but let's connect and let's share this type of message and this thought process and this conversation on as many platforms as we can. I challenge every person who watches this, who is a podcaster, who has a podcast, to reach out to him so that we can keep this conversation flowing. And this is how we show the real life representation of what true crabs you gonna put me in a barrel. I'm gonna show you how to pull out.
Come on, let's get this synergy, apply our energy, and make this thing work, make it grow. I love it. Listen, you heard her. Reach out to me, reach out to Coach, reach out to her, and let's do this. I think spreading that, it's always we think about, and this was years ago, this idea of a cancer, right? But we can spread positivity in the same way where it affects every single space that we encounter where we are. So I love that. Coach, as always, says, Ish, it's just so good anytime we can get together. And with this topic, again, go back for all of you who've been here, go back and watch that portion where we talked about that maternal madness and reaching into and how we kind of sit with things instead of running from these things, giving yourself that space. So thank you as always, for allowing me the opportunity to share the space with you, because it's always good, and no better place to do it than impactful conversation. So I appreciate you, everybody who's let us know where you watch from. Let us know what stood out to you in this interview. Really, let us know what stood out to you in this interview. And if nothing else is, I appreciate you. You know I love you. Anytime you need me, you know what to do.
Thank you for having me, as always.
No doubt. And for everyone else, we'll see y'all next time on another impactful conversations. Peace.
Mm-hmm.